How cool is that? God uses whatever we have to bring, no matter how big or small. Morning kids, last week in Kids Zone, we looked at a story in the book of Luke. It was about the Good Samaritan, a guy who stopped to help someone on the side of the road who was in need. And the person he helped was actually someone that in that time he wouldn't have normally talked to. We looked at this story as a link to generosity, and we learnt that loving others requires action, that we can be generous towards people that we don't personally know, and we can show our love for God by being generous to others. Today I have another story for you about generosity. It comes from the book of Mark, which is the book before Luke in the New Testament as well, and it is one of the Gospels. A Gospel is one of the books that tell the story of Jesus' life. In the Bible, there are 4 Gospels. These are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Some stories happen in all 4 books, and some stories only happen in 1 or 2 books. It really depends on whether the person writing the book was at the same events. This story in Mark that we will look at today is another event that happened in Jesus' life. Last week's story of the Good Samaritan was a parable, which means it was a story that Jesus made up and told to others to teach them about something. The story that we are looking at today is a story that actually happened, and Jesus is also using the event to teach people around them. So today's story is in the book of Mark. As I said, it's about a widow, meaning her husband has actually died and is no longer with her. Let's look out for how this story might teach us about generosity.
Stories of the Bible. The widow's offering. This is Jesus.
Hey-o!
Who is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. While Jesus was on earth, he taught everyone about God's love and healed people from their sickness. He did many miracles like calming storms and even raised people from the dead.
Wahoo!
One day, Jesus was in the temple teaching people and answering questions. He sat down near the collection box where people would bring their gifts to God. He watched as the crowds dropped in their money. He saw rich people drop in lots of money. And then he saw a poor widow come and drop in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, "I tell you the truth. This poor widow has given more than all the others."
Really?
He said this was because the rich people gave a small part of the great amount they had. But the widow was very poor, and she gave everything she had to live on.
That is an interesting story, right? We are going to pause again now, and I want you and your large groups to brainstorm similar to last week. First of all, who was generous in this story? Second, how were they generous? And third, what mattered most about this widow's offering? I'll see you back here in 2 minutes. Just like last week, I did this for myself, and what I learned from this story is that it was the widow who was very generous. She was generous with the little amount of money that she had, her 2 coins. And what stands out to me about this story is that Jesus said her offering was more than other offerings. But she didn't give more money because she only had a little bit. When Jesus says she gave more, he is meaning she made a bigger sacrifice than the other people who gave more money. Instead of sharing a little bit of her money into the jar, she chose to share everything she could into the jar. From this story, Jesus told we can learn that the amount of what we give is not what matters at all. We learn that giving is about the heart, like we learned a few weeks ago, not the outcome. And third, we learn that God uses whatever we give if we are willing to give it. How cool is that? God uses whatever we have to bring, no matter how big or small. I wonder what you might have that you could share with God. God doesn't need our money or our things, but as we learned a few weeks back, when we learn to share what we have to bless others and share God's love, we are making an impact. We're now going to think back to last week when we voted on a need that we want to support. This is our Kids Zone Giving Project. You might have chosen the same need as another Kids Zone group, or your group might have a different need in something really local and close to where you meet for church. We have 2 weeks off Kids Zone after today for school holidays. I would love for you to spend some time over the break to think about how you personally can be generous to the need you've picked. You could brainstorm what this might look like. You may be able to use some of your pocket money if you get some. You might be able to do some work around your house, like cleaning the car, and earn some money maybe. You do not have to give any money to the need that your group has chosen, but we are going to give you the opportunity to give towards that need for the rest of the year. If you would like to contribute, from next term, you can bring some of your money and put into the Kids Zone jar. Then as a group, we will donate that and help the people that you've chosen. If you cannot bring any money, don't worry. There will be other opportunities for you to be generous later in the year with things other than money. But we're never too young to be generous with the things that we have. We can bless the people around us no matter our age. As always, for today, here are 3 questions to help keep the conversation going. Number 1, is it better to give $1 or $10 to someone or something? Question 2, how might we know our heart is in the right place when we give? And question 3, what is something you are willing for God to use, and how could you give that to someone? We'll see you next term. Have a great school holidays. Bye. You will be giving to the opportunity. I read that wrong. Can you go back a minute?